Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful, well, actually, we're still in the auspices of a beautiful Capricorn full moon, the long winter full moon. And welcome to Looking Deeper. Hey, Sandy Herrick.
Hey, Dana. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, I was just explaining. I'm sleepwalking, but I'm fine. I'm on the other side of a lot of stuff. And the full moon has been brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Just brilliant. Our sky here last night was pristine clear. The moon was so light, it was lit. Everything was lit. And I'm just on that, like, I'm so ready to be over with this year. I'm so ready.
I'm with you.
Oh, my God. And I swear, every first day of the year, I always wake up and it's a clean slate. It's just a clean slate. It's something I feel energetically, and it may get muddy fast, I don't know, but at least I wake up and it's like, it's just fresh air. Fresh air. How's the first for you?
Kind of the same way. It really does feel like a clean slate. At least in my mind, I feel as though it's a golden opportunity to do something different.
Mm-hmm. And I can feel the energetics of the numerology that, that tilt of whatever the year was ain't no more.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a whole new numerology in a way that I can actually feel like all the gizmos and the gears and the clock really has turned into an alternate space that is fresh, new, and filled with all sorts of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So, and I'm tired. I mean, I'm tired of 2020. I'm tired in 2020. 2020 has been a bit grueling for all of us, and more grueling for some. And I really want to honor, before we go any farther, the astounding losses that have been in the mass of this mysterious 2020 year. That it's life altering, it's soul altering, it's conscious altering, and so we're all in this incredible shift. Nobody's the same.
Nobody is the same, and it really is a tide that's washed over us.
Yeah. And some of us have stood up to the waves, some were smart enough to dive into the waves, and some of us have ridden the waves, and some of us have gone out with the tide. So, and some really feel like they're floating just adrift. And I want to I in that place of calling out to everybody and being here for everybody. If you're in the tide, it always changes. So allow whatever is going on with you. I had a client yesterday, and it was like, hang on to the driftwood because it will find shore. It will find shore. So, yeah. A lot's going on. So, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, that's what we're talking about tonight, Sand. We're talking about the tide of change, and how I think for most people, if it's happening outside of us, that tide of change also has something that's collaborating within us, or vice versa. There's something within us that the tide is changing to, or because of, and our exterior world changes because of it. One is linked to the other, and I'm with you. It's what's left on the shore. We all know which of the beaches in the places that we go to have the best shells in the morning. Right. And sometimes there's not a stinking shell to be picked up, and other times it's a bevy of shells and treasures. And I think it's kind of a mixed bag this year.
It really is. And, there's this place inside me that knows that there have been a lot of shipwrecks, in all due respect, where the security, the form of something that was containing us has really broken up. And we have all been afloat in some way. Nobody's hanging on in the way that is a customary. I mean, something is different for all of us. We have been ripped of a routine that was familiar, Some of us were, anybody that was bored with it or challenged with it or hoping that there was change. The radical experiences that I have encountered in my private life, in my clientele's life, in my hometown, I mean, I'm grateful that we're tucked into let's be quiet or at least take harbor. But I'm also aware that this is a time where we can't assume we know what's going on. We have to pay attention to what is, not what we think it is, because it's outsmarting us.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
It doesn't mean we won't figure it out, but right now something is outsmarting us. So let whatever's being be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Catherine Harrison, Carla Joe are in the chat room, and Lady Hawk just made a comment. It may be best for some, though, these changes that have happened, and because sometimes we're not in it, or maybe we're not up to making the changes for ourselves. And I think that this year some people have experienced change that perhaps they weren't up to making for themselves, but the universe, creator, call it what you will, stepped in and said, well, we're just going to take care of that for you right now. Hang on.
The roller coaster has left the platform.
Exactly. Let go. We've got the wheel, and get ready for the ride. Buckle up, baby.
Right. And there are, I think, momentums that come. And this is a momentum that is on time universally. And I also know, being generational in the space of, we haven't seen this type of chaos, really radical chaos, since the mid-'60s, when the revolution was all about what was Vietnam, what was the Black movement, what was civil rights, what was the concept of freedom of speech and politics. All that was so potent in the 60s. I was watching TV the other day and did some kind of back when. And it's interesting to know that on TV in the 60s, you could be sitting down eating dinner, watching the police hose with fire hoses the African Americans that were peacefully walking and being attacked by dogs. And, so this chaos is not new. It's here again. It's unfinished business being revisited.
That's what I was going to add. That I feel as though it's unfinished business that's presented itself to be revisited and perhaps wrapped up.
Well, certainly given a whole new platform. Because if you want to go back farther, what was happening in the 50s, what was happening in the Civil War, what was happening in slavery, what was happening in how did our country get formed? Why did it get formed? We're getting formed again.
Mm-hmm.
In ourselves, in our collective, in our communities. And we're also, for me, I know it's being able to identify something I maybe was not ready, like you said, not ready to identify or couldn't quite see. And all of a sudden, like in the full moon, it's like, it's here, whether you want to know about it or not.
How much information are you ready for at this time?
Well, we're saturated with information.
We are.
Saturated. And there's so many vehicles for information that I think one of the things that I'm grateful for is hearing that people are starting to wean themselves away from being so addicted to the sensation of, I've got to get in there, I've got to see what's going on my computer, that they're starting to go quiet again.
Yeah.
They're starting to detach a little bit.
Right.
And, what is it that I know in myself, rather, what am I being told I'm supposed to know?
Todd and I watched the documentary, The Social Dilemma. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
Yeah, it's all about social media and the algorithms and the way that we've been intoxicated by it. And some have, as you just alluded to, become addicted to it. and the way that it's altered not only our day-to-day going about our business, but how it's literally altered our brain and our thinking. And as you know, for some time now, I've been moving away from Facebook, particularly professionally,
Right.
and going to non-social media platforms for privacy, for not feeling as though I'm always revealed or revealing to people that I may not want to be revealed to.
Exactly. I didn't see the documentary, but it's interesting. I saw on YouTube the whistleblower that just came out, the woman that just came out. The algorithms were literally altering our way of thinking and very capable of making us choose out of our norm or be convinced that we need to rethink in a way that's not our normal thinking.
Exactly.
I mean, talk about being, the power of suggestion, inundated with it. Inundated.
Well, I think that part of the pandemic has given us a gift of not being so overly exposed. I think we've been given the privilege of having quiet time and downtime and introspective time if we've chosen to take it, but not to be so overly exposed all the time, all the time. And I think that's a good thing. But for anybody who's listening, The Social Dilemma, I highly recommend it. You will never think about Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of it the same way ever again.
Not only exposed, overstimulated.
Yes.
How competitive it got, how incredibly distant it came from heart to heart to some sensationalism of competition and fake fame.
Yeah. Influencers.
Influencers, exactly. And, selling ourselves in ways that was different. I'm surprised at how many people take photographs with puckered lips.
And let's talk about the eyebrows, will ya?
I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, that ain't natural.
Well, I think that it's one of the tides of change maybe that some are rethinking and maybe receding from the tide of social media to the degree of, its inundation. I know I certainly have, and it feels really good. It feels really good.
What was some of the reasons why, you being empathic and psychic and also doing some very sacred work, how did it influence you? How did it invade you to where you felt you needed to retrieve your sacredness from that?
Well, one of the things that I noticed over, the 10 years or so that I've been on Facebook is that there are Facebook friends. We call them friends on Facebook. Really what they are is connections. And then I have friends.
Right.
But the liberties that some of my Facebook friends felt that they had with regard to connecting with me via, let's just take an example, Facebook Messenger. If I did not answer somebody via Facebook Messenger, like I don't get emails on my business accounts and my personal accounts and my phone and text messages from my friends and family and clients and students, it was astounding to me the number of people who felt because we were connected on Facebook that they had the right to get angry, upset, sometimes even vulgar.
Whoa!
Because I did not answer their instant message instantly on Facebook. And that's when I really sat down and I thought about, what are you doing here? What's going on here? And since when does somebody that you barely know feel as though they have a right to be angry or vulgar or invasive because you are not responding ASAP?
Right.
That was the beginning of the impetus, Sand.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And red alert.
Yeah.
It's that place of, for me, also, all of a sudden there were too many places where people were trying to connect, and it was like, where do I go to find out what's happening for me? What do you mean? You wrote where did you write your message? Where am I supposed to find it?
Right.
I mean, it was all of a sudden it was no longer just email, and you're right. It was like Messenger, email, Instagram. I mean, all these other. It's like, I'm sorry if I missed out where you were.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I can't figure it all out.
Bingo. And so that was really the beginning where I really took a look at how much time I was spending on Facebook, because the interactions, for the most part, really are not personal or sacred. They're very impersonal. And again, it's connections, but it's not necessarily a personal or an intimate connection.
Right.
You know what I'm saying. And it really began my thought process about how did I used to do it? Before the tide of social media changed the way of doing business, how did I let people know I was having classes?
Right.
Well, I remember the days when you didn't have email, right? And so I literally would mail out in the USPS, I would mail out flyers.
Right.
And people would have to call me on the phone to register for a class.
Right. And you had a phone number that you went and answered the phone, and if it didn't answer, you have to call back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a big tide that is changing for me. And those that I know and love, if you have my phone number, there's a reason that you probably have my phone number. If you don't, there's a reason you don't, because we're probably just not that well acquainted, what have you.
Right.
But I've learned to reappreciate quiet, Sandy, in this year.
Absolutely. I'm a very skilled hibernator.
Me too.
And
Todd is giggling over here.
What's up, Todd?
Hello.
So, and it's interesting because there's that place where I do love to be out and about. I don't mind being public. I can tolerate a crowd. I like a good time. But when I'm in my private time, there's a place beside me. And it started when I was a child. My mother used to say, oh, for God's sake, Sandy, you're the only kid out of the 7 that knows how to really be alone. Because and I don't consider it isolating. I was considering it in some way in a place that I didn't have to interact with anybody else. I didn't have to go into somebody else's psyche. I didn't know that then, but it was like my own imagination had space.
Yeah.
My body had space. I didn't have to share it with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm very clear I wasn't making a conscious choice to be alone. I just enjoyed it and filled up my space and did choose to stay away from the house. I'd climb a tree and hang up there and just watch everybody do what they do and not tell anybody where I was.
I was a tree climber too. Yep, absolutely. I love those days.
I couldn't get my butt off the ground today.
Oh, goodness.
Ladder.
Yeah.
I need a ladder, but I used to shimmy and shake, and you jump up, you hang on, you swing your legs up, and there you go.
Exactly, on top of the world.
Oh,
so I think, part of the tide of change for me anyway is a renewed appreciation for quiet and simplicity and not a bombardment.
Right. There's that beauty of knowing, even in the privacy of my own practice, it's not how much am I doing, it's the quality that's being done.
Yeah.
And the tide of that too, and you were talking about that with the work that you're doing, the quality of the work that's being done. When you asked me last night, what's going on in my work, it's like my jaw is on the ground sometimes with how pristine the information is being validated or brought forth. And for me, that's happening because there's less clutter in the stratosphere to interrupt between myself and spirit or myself and the client. And so my being in this I'll say isolation, because it really is an isolation. It kind of like validates why somebody would go to the mountaintop and wait and listen, or go to the cave and, cloister in something, so you're not distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Nor the wavelengths or the tides of other people's chaos, or G5 is out there now. How is that affecting our own psyche?
Oh, the 5G?
Oh, yeah. See, I'm old.
Yeah. You're not old. Right.
Yeah,
I think for some of us, honestly, it's like a wave that gets the information to us faster.
Right. But isn't it interesting that I experience that quality of information in the psyche, in the psychic?
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
It rides the invisible train from spirit to the third eye, or all the clairs, all the psychic. The psychic antenna is also being affected by 5G.
It's quivering in it. All these subtle things. Who sees what 5G is? But
right.
It's doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Like the radio station, who sees it? But it's doing it. So it's the tide of information, the tide of stimulation. I'm tired today because I have been working and there's been a lot of stuff going on. But there's that place of, I am so grateful when rest is deep, not visited, indulged.
Mm-hmm. Del Marie is in the chat room, and she's saying quiet time has helped with my claircognizance. So yeah, just, knowing, wisdom, understanding, feeling.
Right. Hi, Del.
Chue. And I agree with her. It's been a wonderful downtime to be able to just be. And to really dive into the practice. You and I were talking the other night when we had our visit about our work and how the work is changing. And I think for some of us, because we're having more time to ourselves, or cloistered time, it feels like to me. I use the word cloister.
Absolutely.
For me, the practice has been deepening and quickening.
Right.
What about you? Is your psychic practice?
Absolutely. There's a pristineness that is sharper, quicker, deeper, and softer at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That there's because of so much going on, the compassion is there with a different quality of wisdom that I can feel in my heart and in the vibration. My goosebumps now are in the layers of my aura.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I can feel the tidal waves in my auric body that kind of touches me on the outside and starts moving in. And it starts to quiver before it gets to my skin. Yeah. And I can feel it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can literally feel it. So I can feel and energetically really experience when that energy comes to me, through me, and goes through these waves of energies to connect to the person or people that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
And in the galleries that I've been doing, 20 some odd people, they're all part of the wave. As when one person gets talked to, we've experienced that in classes and in galleries and in all sorts of forms, that it's no longer just for one person. It weighs through the subconscious and consciousness of everybody that's listening.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's a discernment is happening. And that I really appreciate in me. The discernment inside myself of, wait a second, somebody's asking a question. Is that the question to answer?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's here bringing something. Are they even aware of what they're standing in that needs to be brought to them?
Exactly. Well, and I think that there's a whole lot of that going on because here in the West, we don't like to talk. Well, I talk about it all the time. You do too. But for the majority of people here in the West, the word death and the talk of death is taboo. And we are being washed in a tidal wave of death. And many people are having to face death in ways they never dreamed of before. And what I mean by that is the number of clients who I have recently, in the last few months, that are in the medical field,
right,
that have never had to be the hospice person. They've
right,
never had to be the last person to bear witness to someone's life. They've never had to be the only person there as life was leaving a body. They've never had to be the person there with the dead body and the spirit alive. And Denise, I know I felt the spirit of my patient. I
absolutely.
felt that. I saw it. Something happened.
Right, right,
The medical field is about preserving life,
right,
keeping life going. And so
right.
many in the medical field now are facing death, dying, and the afterlife, and really have not been prepared for it.
Well, that's certainly a wave because I want to reframe it just a little bit that as the body dies, the wave of this spirituality is becoming massive.
Yes.
And so I have experienced death and being present for someone's death, and also doing memorials for people or funerals, and being able to be a part of the psyche at a distance and also in the presence. And it is amazing how what we may have called a ghost before is the presence of the soul.
Yes.
Because these are not hauntings. These are wild and wonderful. I can't even call them visitations anymore. It's the presence of being with. It's the fullness of being involved with the energy of the soul or the spirit of another. And for me, the way I want to describe it is the way that it happened with my father literally 30 years ago on December 1st in the full moon when I went to his freshly dug grave that he was placed in that day on December 1st, 1990. And I promised I would be back in the night so that he wouldn't be alone his first night. And I was alone there in the moonlight in the cemetery with him. And when I was settled, which only took a few moments, and looked up at the moon, I was in wonder with my father was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And truly experienced it. And then last month, I was out on the deck, and I went out to the full moon and spoke with it, and it spoke to me. And then the reminiscence of, oh my God, my father, and my husband is challenged by leukemia, and at some point I really made peace with he will be a part of all that within his time. And it was like, oh wow, the last time I thought about that was, or experienced it at this level, was with my father. And then the shock of, wait a second, my father, what's today? It was 30 years to the day, if not the hour.
Wow.
And I totally did not remember it during the day, but it quickened in that moment. And so it visited me. It visited myself and Bobby. It visited my father's presence. And it wasn't that he showed up in my head. He showed up in my space. He brought me into his space, quite frankly.
Beautiful.
And I think that's what's happening. Spirit's bringing us into its space,
Mm-hmm.
rather than us sitting down, meditating, being quiet, and hoping something happens. Did I feel it? Was that something? Oh, no, it can't be. Could it be? Well, let me check with Dana. It was like, this thing's coming in and going, wake up. I'm here.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that to me is that new wave, the new tide of, oh my God, when's the last time so many souls passed at the same time?
Right.
I mean, they say that a person's dying every so many seconds in the world.
Every so many seconds just here in the United States. There is a mass exodus at this time. And I've always thought of the year 2020 as the year of clear vision and clear visioning and clairvision and all of that. It's about vision, seen and unseen. And to me, it's also the year of the return of the mystic, of the healer, of call it what you will, the spiritual person, the shaman, the medicine person, so many names to call the mystic. But we're back, and not only back, and it's okay to be back, but we are needed.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not talking about the fluffy bunny stuff that you and I have chatted about all these many years. But I mean the deep understanding of soul, and those that understand the deep teachings and ways of soul. We're needed at this time.
Yeah, and we're being revealed in a different way.
Yes. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I had a phenomenal experience 2 days ago. I was literally, with my ribs and my horse medicine and being tossed to the ground and having all this stuff happening. I'm 3 months in now. And so my body is certainly not recovered, and it is recovering. So I was kind of like, I could be taking a Epsom salt with lavender bath right now, or do I just get out on the front lawn and rake those damn nuts? I mean, the tree has just dumped all the nuts down, and normally it would be all cleared up, and I look outside, and it's like, that thing is, now all the snows go, I see it again, So it's like, Sandy, go out and rake. And it wasn't me saying it to me. It was like something said, Sandy, go out and rake. It was like, well, okay. And I went out and I'm raking with, okay, I can't use my left shoulder. I can use my right shoulder. Rake. Okay, I got to have it. And all of a sudden, this blonde-haired woman, bouncy blonde, lots of blonde hair, of a light of a woman, came walking down even saying it gives me goosebumps. Walking down the road, and I just happened to lift my head up and look, and it was like, who is that? That's new. Because you know who's walking by your road on occasion, I live on a dead end. And so, and I kept raking, and she kept coming, and she had a smile on her face like, oh my God, I found you, there you are. And it's like, I'm looking at it. Finally, I look up, and she goes, Sandy, do you remember me? And it was like, I do, I know you. Give me your name again. And it was like, I taught classes at her office building that she shared with her husband 6-7 years ago.
Wow.
Some of my women's groups. And I just could not remember her name, but I remembered her energy and all this stuff. And she shows up out of nowhere, but she brings a wave of energy with her. And I want that to be really, really acknowledged. I could see the shimmer of the wave coming with her, like seeing dolphins in the wave or sharks in the waves, and you're standing there ankle deep, but there's a 9-foot wave in front of you, and there's this massive, and you can just see it. This wave came toward me, and it's like she moved 2 streets up and around, so a mile and a half up the road, wherever, and a couple of years ago, and we're talking, and it turns out that she is now counseling all these individuals that are in the midst of the wave of the crises that is happening. Addiction, lost identity, anybody that's really on the brink, these younger individuals that have lost their right to just go out and live and feel the thriving quality of being vital in the prime of their life. She said that there is a massive, massive crisis, and she's in the wave of being a peer counselor, not necessarily a therapist, but a peer counselor. And she said, we are so in need that these people that are in crisis are given the tools, given the compassion, are heard, because massive suicide, massive depression, and the incredible sorrow of the lost identity. Talk about low tide.
Mhm.
And I looked at her and I said, Liz, this is divine intervention, because I was supposed to be inside taking a bath. And she just kind of laughed. And it was like, whatever she's talking about, so far I've recommended 3 people to the program, and it was like so natural. I didn't have it the day before, and now it's like, wait a second, there's a place to go to.
Mhm.
And you need to get there before you stop thinking about being here as a reality, or start thinking that not being here is a reality.
Right.
Because and to realize that, yeah, there's the ship has crashed, we're floating, but there is a wave that will bring us to the beach, and we have to be patient. I think part of the wave that everybody's so angry at is, it used to be if I wanted, I could just have it and I could find it and do it, and now it's like, no, you can't. It has to be different.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't just go out and find a place to live. You can't just go out and find a job. I mean, everybody's in a stigma of stymied by all this stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, we're confused.
Mhm.
The wave of confusion is really so sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really want to honor that and allow the confusion that's being felt by all of us, of why is this happening, or how is this happening, or how is it touching us. It's touched your family, it's touched my family, it's touched my house, it's touched your house, it touches relatives. Nobody hasn't been touched.
Exactly.
This is the first time I've ever experienced this, where the wave, I mean, everybody's getting wet.
Mhm. Yes, and for some people it is a riptide. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And you and I think we can both agree that we understand everything happens for a reason. Del Marie is working through having COVID right now.
Oh my God, sweet girl, I hold you so tenderly.
Yep. So she's taking good care of herself, and she's suffering with a lot of dizziness from it.
Okay.
And so all of these experiences are happening cloistered. People are being cloistered. People are being challenged with boundaries and borders and all that good kind of a thing. And I do believe at the end of the day, there's a reason. There's a bigger reason.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, for me, in that place of Mama Earth finally just said, you didn't listen, I'm on. Go to your room. Go to your room. And it's, generationally, in the epochs of 2,000 years, 3,000 years, 4,000, we are so out of touch with the fact of thinking anything like this should be happening to us. These kind of things happened to the Egyptians or to the Grecians or to...
It came with locusts.
Exactly. I mean, this is, Ramses and Moses, let my people go. And, there's going to be a flood. There's going to be there's going to be a pestilence. Put blood over your door.
Right.
And it's, we didn't think this could ever touch us again. And so this is nature saying it always gets the last word. Maybe it always gets the first word. And we have to realize we have to work with it rather than just be angry. We have to experience it. Think about when polio was around, when chickenpox could kill, when syphilis would kill. I mean, we have forgotten we're vulnerable.
And there you have it. And I think another beautiful thing that's happened is because we have gone through the tide of being a digital age where writing a handwritten note really is a lost art. Picking up the phone and calling is, for some people, a lost art. And certainly, for some people, even social interaction is something that old people did, right? Having social graces, social understandings, has not swept across every generation.
Right.
And I think now there's a greater appreciation for face-to-face.
Well, it's certainly almost a lost art that we're realizing we want to keep. One of the things that happened to me in the past few weeks was that I got a phone call from the hospital saying, "Where's Bobby? He urgently needs to get to the hospital." And it was like, well, if you can't find him out, where's Bobby? It's like, and it was that he had been to the hospital and he had taken off, and they were trying to reach him, and his phone had died. And so they're calling me, and as soon as I heard that, it was like, oh my God, if he goes through those doors and has to stay there, I can't get to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a hold of him and said, "You got to turn the car around. You've got to go back. They're looking for you. But don't go in the doors until I get there, because I want to hug you. I want to hold you for a minute, because I didn't know if he was going to die or have to stay there. And that reality is so precious, to know that this could be a last touch."
Mm-hmm.
And then everything is, Jesus, take the wheel.
Right. Yeah.
We have to hold cellularly something about spirit differently than we can be at their side, or we get to say goodbye. I mean, all these people that have died without touching their beloveds.
Yes.
That's a new wave also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a big new wave, and that wave has really begun some pretty deep conversations about, again, death and dying, and is there a soul, and what happens to my patient after I've had to take them off of life support, and what was that I felt in the room, Denise, and are they angry with me because I'm the one that had to pull the plug? It was time. Are they going to be mad at me? And so the burden, right? There is a different burden now for some medical professionals. The burden of, so what is death really?
Right.
And I just had a role in that death. I wasn't able to preserve life, which is what I'm to do.
Right.
And now, at all costs, and now I had no other choice but to be the one to pull the plug. And what does that mean for me? Even people that this year have had to stay home from church,
right,
and for the very first time in their life have lit their own candle on a Saturday night or a Sunday. Right. And the burden of guilt or shame or blame or, oh my goodness, what does this mean for my soul that I didn't go to church and I lit my own candle, and I don't have the paperwork to do that.
Well, that slaps me right in the face with the wisdom of that 4-year-old kid that I was in catechism. That was like, you open up, who loves you? God loves you. Why does God love you? Because God made you, because God loves you. Blah, 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 blah. Where is God? God is everywhere. Hand goes up. If God's everywhere, how come he's not in my house on Sunday? Well, God is at our house all dang week.
It's a good thing we didn't, grow up together or anything, because we would have given our catechism teacher a rough go of it, Sand, together.
I mean, it would have been, we would have tag teamed, that's for certain. But I mean, it was one of those mind-boggling things that a 4-year-old was able to understand instantly. With, wait a minute, why? If God is everywhere, and that brings me right to the full moon with my father. All of a sudden, I experienced everywhere. Mm-hmm. I And for these nurses and doctors that you're talking about in the hospital, you know, this is no different than when somebody went off to war.
Right.
And we would say goodbye to our beloved, and they would fall on the field. And, I mean, in Vietnam, to watch coffin after coffin after coffin draped with the flag, and to return and not know what's inside that coffin.
Right.
And to know that our beloveds died without us touching them, and with how does the word get back to us from them, and how does the word get to them from us? Mm-hmm. There has to be another wave of information, or, like you say, to write the script. Is it in our prayers? Is it in our words? Is it in our thoughts, in our deeds? It is in energy. Mm-hmm. And all these aspects of communication are forms of energy. So when we light the candle, how devotional that is. I mean, just think about a world that the only light you got, if you wanted to have light inside the house, was to light the candle.
Exactly.
And so there was ritual every day to bring light. And then how do you finally bring that to something more intimate with lighting it on the altar, making it sacred, having it hold someone's soul? Mm-hmm. How many churches have you gone to as we traveled and lit the votives of, knowing that in a magnificent church there would be these votives that would have these rich colors, and to light it and to watch it flicker, knowing that this was dedicated to someone, and now their spirit was mm-hmm. held in that flame in the church. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just going to say, that's happening inside of our hearts now. Mm-hmm. I think it always did, but we didn't know it. Exactly. Or we knew it and forgot it.
Yeah. In many ways, the pendulum is swinging back. I'm one of those people that I subscribe to the Farmer's Almanac.
Ah.
And Todd was peering through it the other day, and he said, if you didn't know any better, you would think that this was a metaphysical catalog, magazine, book.
Somebody psychic said this was going to happen.
Yeah. And so the Farmer's Almanac really is filled with the old ways of watching the stars, watching the moon phases. What's the best day to bake bread? What are the star alignments that say this will be the best day for you to bake bread in each of the months? This is the best day to inseminate a cow. This is the best day for, according to the star alignments.
So where did they get this intelligence, and just listening to you makes me want to, suck on a piece of straw and walk out the field?
Yeah. And so it's so beautifully succinct and timeless. Some of the antiquity of our soul, I think, is finally receiving a place at the table to revisit us.
Well, we are left to our instincts again.
Yes.
And to the ritual of the rhythm.
Yes.
The wave.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And it's, it's necessary for our skin to feel the vibration of the wind or the rain or the ether. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful that it's coming back in a way that we can all be the Farmer's Almanac.
Exactly. We can embody that. Yeah. We can be that. Reconnecting with Grandmother Earth.
Yeah, I just smell baking bread. That's pretty hey. And you know it ain't me.
It's not you, no.
It ain't me.
No.
Wow, that was wild.
Right.
So I interrupted you. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
So the tide of change in many respects is kind of like the Ouroboros. We're making the full circle, the journey of the Fool. And we're coming back to that, in the tarot deck, the very first card, the Fool, beginning again. And I feel as though it's a great big reset.
Yeah.
It is. It's a reset. We've had time to sit and ponder and look around, get out and smell the grass again, take our shoes off, and get in the dirt, get in the sand. Kids riding bicycles again. There's a novel idea. It's a beautiful thing to see. Todd and I were just commenting the other day that the local Meijer store is actually stocked with bicycles.
Wow.
How wonderful. I mean, when I was a kid, that was the mode of transportation. It certainly wasn't my mom or dad.
No.
It was, get on a bicycle.
And you went for miles.
And you went for miles, yeah. And you bought your own bicycle.
God dang.
Mine was a beautiful, burgundy red 10-speed.
Oh, baby.
Yeah. So I believe that some of the simplicities of life that can give us the greatest joy are part of what we're receiving back and appreciating again.
Right. And, it might have been a simpler life, but I think it was also a more connected life.
Yeah.
And we didn't even know it because we were just in it.
Exactly. There was one phone in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kelly would call me and say, "Hey, what are you doing tonight after, your parents are asleep?" Right? I'll knock on your bedroom window and we're sneaking out over the bushes, right? And, yeah. Back in those, there was no texting. She was there about that time and she'd, knock on the window or what have you, and off we would go. We were pretty expert at it. And there was such a wonderful innocence about that, looking back.
And there was a safety.
And a safety.
That safety has been corroded.
Yes.
And that is sad.
Yeah.
That is sad.
Yeah.
And there's that place of, I'm grateful that my cellular body understands one phone in the home, one car in the home, a bicycle, freedom. I can remember the day I bought my first answering machine. It was like, whoa.
Wow.
And that, that I was free to go out because I had my business already established. And if I wasn't home to answer the phone, they didn't get me, but they called back.
Right.
But this was the freedom of I could go out and I could come home, and I had a secretary.
Was it a cassette tape one?
Of course it was.
Oh my God, how cool is that?
I mean, it was $150. You had to save your money.
Yeah.
And then the quiver of practicing, hello, this is Sandy Herrick, da da da. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, this is Sandy Herrick, da da da. And then listening to it, it's like, no. Okay, once again. Okay, this is, it's just like, and the surprise to come home and listen to the message. So I'm old. I forget what TV show was on where they showed a millennial or look at a phone from then, and they didn't know how to operate it. That you would put your finger inside the dial and dial it, and I mean, it's like, oh my God, that's right, they wouldn't know.
Sandy, here in our home down in the kitchen, we have the original phone that was in the home, and I didn't have them take it off the wall because it's an antique. And honestly, you can't believe the number of people that have walked in and said, "Oh my God, I didn't even know those existed anymore." And the number of younger clients that have looked at me and said, "What is that?"
What is that? Yeah. Why? Yeah. I mean, and to the first Princess phone that would be on this. Talk about the wave. And then when it did hang up on the wall, it's like, whoa, sleek.
Yeah.
Sleek. I mean, the first phones you had to have a little muscle to lift it. So,
not to mention the party line, right?
Oh my God,
yeah.
We had when I was a kid, and it was, and you asked somebody for, you had 4 numbers. Why is my girl crying? She's looking for a ball. Talk about a wave.
Yeah.
What's up? Oh, you had my sock in your mouth. Oh, that's tasty. Oh, yeah. Listen to her.
Ralph.
She wants to go and bury it somewhere.
Oh.
Mommy, God. Come here. You want to give that to me? No. Of course not. God, everybody, I love this dog. She's talk about the wave. She has created a wave of excitement in this house. That is, I mean, and her enthusiasm when she sees me, I have to brace myself because she's about 110 pounds of joy.
Aww.
And she's the biggest surprise of the year. Literally. Hey, baby girl.
Kelly is sharing in the chat room that she remembers as a young girl living with her grandparents, there was still a party line, and apparently Mrs. Tauscher was kind of a phone hog. So she would have to ask Mrs. Tauscher, may we have a turn, please?
Well, yeah. And then they would listen in.
Well, I was going to say, that was the original social media.
Yeah,
because
hang up the phone.
Exactly, because you didn't hear the click.
Right.
So you knew they were listening in.
And that was the original heavy breathers.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm loving at this time is the fact that we're given another chance.
Yes.
You know, it's the end. It's the best of times. It's the worst of times. And the end of something is so, the tide has gone out.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going out. You know, think about it. And in 2 days, it's 2021.
Right.
How long have we been waiting?
Well, and I was just going to say that, Sandy, we really need to acknowledge for everybody that's listening to us, wherever you happen to be around Grandmother Earth, and those that are listening and also in the chat room, for a long time, many of us have been saying, but the change is coming. The change is coming. It's almost here. Hold the light. That's what Linda Griezak always says. Hold the light. Hold the wattage.
Right.
And none of us were exactly sure about what that change was that was coming.
Right.
And yet, lo and behold, here it is. And in the last week, we have been witness to quite the planetary conjunct, recreating what was once known as the Star of Bethlehem formation, that now we know is the Aquarian portal. It's hello, Aquarius. Well, welcome. You're fully here now. And right now, as you and I are speaking, we are under the auspices of a magnificent winter full moon in Aquarius.
Yeah.
And
is this the first Aquarius moon?
in Capricorn. In Capricorn.
Okay.
And Capricorn is about discernment.
Wow.
It's about the waves and the oceans of being and discernment.
Well, it's interesting. I saw the biggest brown owl sweep across my backyard at about 5 feet above the ground today. And it was one of those things where I just happened to walk out in the back, and it was flying right at me. I mean, and it swooped by, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute, owl medicine. And it felt like it was sweeping away time.
Oh.
It was one of those bizarre moments where, talk about the wave. I mean, it didn't flap its wings. It just glided through, but swooped. And of course, I did a head count right away. There was nothing in its mouth. All my cats were in, chickens were counted for. But an owl swooping, hunting in broad daylight?
That's extraordinary.
That's extraordinary. And it did. It really, and it came out of the east, literally due east, straight across, headed west. And it was one of those moments where I just saw a phenomena, and I'm not quite certain what I saw, but I'm grateful I was given the opportunity to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of what we're in now, is that we're watching something that we don't necessarily know what we're watching, but we've got front row seats. We're seeing it.
Well, we do, and we're kind of like in Diagon Alley, all of us. And there's phenomena that is happening that if you are asleep at the wheel, shame on you, because you're missing a pretty doggone good show right now. Because phenomena is so deep and intrinsic is the word that I want to use. It's everywhere. If you are awake and aware. And last night I did a full moon gathering and via webinar, because that's, thank goodness for webinars in this time.
Zoom works.
You got it. And when I was done with that, I looked over my desk and I looked over my ancestral altar, and I took the most amazing photograph of a man's face.
Woof.
That stayed there, Todd's nodding his head, that stayed there for, well, a good hour. And I took a photograph of him, and I watched it, and Todd, he said, in my Taurus mind, if I look at it from this angle, it should look a certain way, which I so appreciate about him, because if it's just a cow being a cow, I need to know that too. But
right.
Here it was.
Right.
I have an astonishing photograph of this man.
Wow.
Coming out of the ancestral altar. And I looked at Todd and I said, this is one of those moments that is so exquisite.
It's present.
It's present, and it's present in so many ways for so many people. And unplugging is one of the greatest ways of being awake and aware and open to it.
Decluttering so that it can be seen.
Right, so we can accept the invitation.
Right.
We've been invited for a long time.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And we've been excluded for a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's both sides of that coin. And there's the beauty, I know, for the simple fact that the Aquarian age has been coming and coming and coming and coming. And to have it be present, I am deeply saddened that I did not get to see the Star of Bethlehem or the Christmas star. We were just under this massive cloud for days. But it had that faith in me knowing it's there.
Yes.
It's happening. I don't have to see it. I would like to see it, but it's there. And feeling that this is initiating the new light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's initiating the feminine. Really,
yes.
The feminine guard,
yes.
or guardian, or however you want to say it. It's like the birth of the feminine, the birth of maybe honoring the Virgin as the vessel, or, I mean, we could say all sorts of things, but I know it was honoring.
Yes. It's the female taking her seat with
yes.
the male. It's the ladies of the realm joining the knights of the realm. And one of the most beautiful, ancient old teachings about the age of Aquarius is that it's overlighted by the Archangel Saint Gabriel.
Mm.
And in any portrait of Gabriel, whether it's from antiquity or modern day, typically you see Gabriel holding a pitcher or a vessel of water. And that water pouring down on all of us here on Grandmother Earth represents wisdom. It represents the Sophia, but it represents the divine feminine wisdom pouring forth from the galaxies and universes, from the heart and mind of Creator to Earth.
Which is really the subconscious.
Exactly. To the psyche.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that would be the current, that would be the wave, that would be the tide. That's,
yes.
That's the incredible magnetism of north and south, of gravity, of the lunar pull, and the tides that mean that, I remember the conversations way back when, well, if the earth can be affected by the moon, how are we, the people, really affected by the moon? And it was like, you got to be out of your mind. What is that? And yet, the police would sign up for if it's a red moon or a blue moon. It was like, oh, the red moon, get ready. The crazies are coming up. That these frequencies, these tides, these conduits of energy,
yes,
need to be re-experienced by we who have traveled way too far from it.
I I love that. Say that again.
I don't know if I can. That we need, I don't know, I can't. Did you record it?
That we who have traveled so far from it.
Yeah, are returning to it.
Are returning to it because we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it allowed us. It allowed us to leave. And I think we're also at that point now where a lot of my clientele within the medical world is realizing that the science and the spirit, exactly like what's happening in the overwhelming mass of death, spirit is showing up in medicine, and medicine is showing up, or science is showing up in spirit, and it's validating each other. It's collaborating.
Yes.
It's offering the proof. Yes, there is an activity after someone passes. Yes, there is a presence as soon as one leaves the body. Yes, there is magna in the air.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, how about the volcano? I mean, we got fire and brimstone and volcano and pestilence. I mean, it's the end of days and the beginning of time.
I love that. Yes. If you've ever been in a spiritualist circle, years and years and years ago, I was at a spiritualist church in Circle, and I had never seen the formation of spirit in that way. I can't remember what they call that. It almost looks cloudy or milky and wispy. And that's when I really began the deep study of the beingness of spirit, of soul, and the many ways that it comes to us. Because we have gone so far afield.
Well, you know, it's a certain vibration of ectoplasm.
That's it. That's the word, ectoplasm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and it does. It vaporizes. And, you know, I've channeled where globs of goo come out of my nose, and it's like it's the ectoplasma where it's something is present. And it has to do with moisture. It has to do with the mist. That's the mist of Avalon. It has to do in that morning dew when, you know, the residue of the shimmer can lie on top of a presence and make it glow, where if it's broad daylight or in the heat, you wouldn't see it.
Right.
You may see it as a heat wave, but the mist gives it form. You can see it swirl.
Exactly.
What puts a swirl in the middle of the mist that's been quiet?
Right.
Ooh, makes me shiver.
And the levitating trumpet. That was, you know, for this little Catholic girl watching a trumpet levitate and ectoplasm swirl around, I was like, wow. Yeah. Where was this in catechism, right?
Not on page 2. Not even on page 13.
Exactly. So, Sandra, at the top of the hour, so what's your final thought for this evening? With all the beautiful people that are joined with us tonight.
The only thing that's permanent is change.
Yes.
And I want to offer blessings to every single family member that has lost someone to this time and space. And we are now just starting to give birth to those that have been conceived during this time. So the babies that are the quickening for the future, that have been brought life during this pandemic are coming. I mean, this is historic. Mm-hmm. And, they're starting to be born. And so this is the beginning of not just what is next, but what has been promised to appear. This is destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So hang on, trust. I have to say, have more than faith. Have wisdom that it exists. And have the faith in the fact that you too belong. So, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Sandy.
Oh, God, I love you all. How do you, what's your wrap-up, Dana?
Well, that's really the wrap-up, isn't it? It is an exciting time.
Yeah. And
it is here. And whenever I think about the ensconcement of Aquarius, I think about the year 2003 and a message that I got from my friend Ratiba in Egypt. And they were so excited in Egypt because the tomb of Nefertiti, Queen Nefertiti, had finally been found. And we had this conversation about Aquarius finally really ramping up because the Queen, Nefertiti, had finally risen up through the sands of time, literally.
Wow.
And here we are, on Earth. On Earth, and here we are. So Happy New Year, Sandy.
Woo! 1, 2, 3, go.
Blessings be, everybody. Happy New
See you
Year.
next year. Bye.
Bye-bye.